Hi guys, and welcome to Changing Gears episode number 7. 7 times we've done this, and I'll say this at the beginning every week. Where the bloody hell's L?
It's not here again, is he?
He's not yet. Have you got your glasses back yet?
Have I yet? I thought his house. Been over a month. You know this, right? Over a month.
Despicable. Absolutely despicable from his point of view. But we didn't have an episode last week, so quite a lot to discuss. Obviously, well, me and Frew have been obviously part of the Pro League doing the cast per week, but Toby, we haven't spoke to you about the games, so we'll get into them very, very quickly. 2 weeks of the Pro League have already passed in Europe, well, across the world actually. But the European results, it's been quite interesting. Let's be honest. It's not necessarily went the way we thought it would, but we've had close games which we're fairly happy about, Frew.
Yeah, I mean, I even after week 2, right? That's how I'm looking at it. We've had some good games, and I think that overall there's been some good performances by every team. So that's all we could ask for at this stage.
Yeah, Toby, what do you think of the game so far?
Awesome. I think even if you don't even watch the streams, just look at the results, you can see, wow, Europe is actually quite close. It's not this team called the EU's Finest dominating every single map they get into. And if you just look at the Pro League standings, everyone has won one, lost one. Everyone's got 2 points, boys. You couldn't ask for better. And I think, especially week 1, it kicked off in a big way. EU's Finest losing their very first Pro League match.
Yep,
that was crazy. First of all, wasn't it?
Yeah, that I think, we always thought that Rated R potentially had it in them, but I think it was the fashion that had happened. That's what caught me and Frew off guard anyway. We were a bit like, well, they got smoked. Like it wasn't like a drawn out 7-6, Rated R just about pulling off the upset sort of thing. It was a Rated R looked really good, and EU's Finest didn't look great in week number 1. We'll stay on the EU's Finest because they look a lot better against our damage this week. A lot better. That's sort of more what we expected. It was just really good gears. There was nothing. I don't want to sit here and say that, they just walked through them every round. They just controlled the game at every single point. And, we talk about EU's Finest being that team who can fly across the map and just slay you. They were just winning the initials, holding the hills, and just grinding out the rounds. But it never felt like they were ever going to lose one. They always felt like they were in control of the round for.
Yeah, they did. And I think in terms of the slaying side of things, all of EU's Finest now, they're kind of sitting up there on that KDA, like at the top of the leaderboard, in the kills to death leaderboard. And honestly, that is the EU's Finest that I was hoping we'd see in the week 1, I guess. That didn't really show up, but yeah, in week 2 they definitely came to play, and well, they made a mockery out of our damage. To be honest with you, it was a really strong performance.
They really did, and I think like one of the important things to note is the fact that they just like the very, very small amount of deaths. Like I was saying that before, it didn't feel like it was like, it felt like a drubbing. Like I think it was like 7-1, 7-4 or something against our damage this week. But I never felt like they were just constantly slaying and on top of them all the time. They were just winning most of the gunfights and grinding out the result. It didn't feel like they were just constantly running through them. It was like initials, set up, win a couple more kills, potentially dominate, or just hold. And they were just making things so difficult for our damage to push through. Toby, I'm not too sure if you've seen the game between EU's Finest and our damage, but it seems like a return to form.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely what EU's Finest will be looking for, right? Our damage won 5 rounds in 2 maps. That's literally the score lines you expect to see for EU's Finest to take on. And I think, just hearing the setups and from you guys and how it's not just a straight slaying, it feels like EU's Finest perhaps are paying a bit more respect to the EU teams. I remember we mentioned in the last episode, actually, that EU's Finest will be looking to change their sleeping schedules, perhaps, and go against these North American teams and get some really big practice against the top teams in Gears Esports. And you'd assume that maybe they'd play better than against the European teams. But it actually looked like in the first week that perhaps they went a little bit too easy going into it, and perhaps underestimated teams like Rated R, Obey even, and our damage as well. I think EU's Finest will be looking to maintain this form now. I don't think they'll be looking for another blunder where they go out in such fashion as they did in week 1. And with the table looking, so balanced, as I said, everyone on 1 win, 1 loss, EU's Finest will be looking to try and edge their way now in the pack, because they really do feel like as individuals and as a team. That's how they should be. It's in the team name, right? EU's finest. They've been this dominant team for so long. Week 1 would have been a big strike to their egos, and I think they'll be happy with themselves for week 2. It's a question of whether they actually maintain that now and really do assert themselves in this pro league, this first pro league for Gears 5, that they are still EU's finest.
And I think we talk about inconsistencies. We can talk about Obey Alliance. I mean, week number 1 against our damage, they didn't really seem at the races. But then, I mean, we were so surprised by this because we expected them going in against Rated R and sort of being like, oh, okay, well, Rated R be the EU's finest. Obey lost R damage. This should be pretty simple for Rated R. And it was anything but. In the end, close game 1, even closer game 2, which Rated R really should have closed out, you felt. But I think, looking at them, they're just so aggressive. And just to read off some stats for you guys, the top 3 the top 3 in the leaderboard of total eliminations across both weeks, every single one of them, the top 3 is from Obey Alliance. And I think that just tells you everything, is that they like to fly people, they like to be aggressive, and it was a good win for them.
Yeah, it was. I mean, on that stat as well, we should also point out how far ahead the top 2 are ahead of the rest of the pack as well.
Saki is so far ahead, actually.
Yeah. He's over 30 eliminations up, which is more than most people are averaging a map. So he's almost a full map ahead in terms of eliminations already, and we're only 2 weeks in. So yeah, they did slay out, and that second game was very, very close. I agree. Rated R should have closed it out. They'll also agree that, I'm pretty sure. But what a performance from Obey, and good to see that. Yeah, they didn't take that first week too difficult, too hard, and come back swinging. Right, they managed to get their win already.
Yeah, that was the crazy thing. And just to point out what you said about Saki, 42 eliminations is his average over every single map. And bearing in mind, in week number 1, they lost 2-0 to our damage. So he's still putting up the numbers, which is good to see from his point of view. He'd be happy with that one. But as I said, eliminations seemingly not the problem for Obey. But for Rated R, not the best second week. I think, you look at it. Do you think they maybe, I don't want to say they got cocky, but do you think like a weight of expectation was there? Do you think that they were sort of like, well, we should beat Obey pretty simply, considering what happened last week? Or do you think Obey just played so much better than they did in week number 1?
So the first thing I'll point out is that I think they made a mistake. I think they made a mistake in the picks and bans phase. They dropped some bunker. Yeah, exactly. We talked about it a little bit on the stream. But for anyone who didn't watch the Pro League, if not, why not? Rated R picked bunker. A bunker was the map that Obey managed to beat EU's finest on in the qualification tournaments. They play it a little bit differently to everyone else, and it's one of those maps that you can't really just get involved and fly at each other if the other team doesn't want you to, right? Like it's very easy to shut that down. And well, Obey they took them to the races on that map. They really did do a number on them. They pulled the exact same strat that they did against EU's finest. They played it very very well, and honestly, yeah, that's kind of where it fell down for me. I would have liked to have seen Rated R picked a map they'd probably won in the week before, just to kind of carry on that momentum on those maps. But
yeah, because just like you guys know, obviously it was Rated R's pick was bunker, and then of course we went on to Vascar, which was Obey Alliance's pick, so they went on to win that one. Albeit that was still very, very close on Vascar. Couple of really big players. I think looking at Warrior Guns, looking
Breaker,
at Breakers 3 as well. There was some big moments. There were some really big moments that helped them get there, and it was a really good comeback. So it was nice to see that they got that composure there. But I feel like this is going to be a really, really painful loss for Rated R. I think they'll look back at this one and sort of say, right, that is like not good from us. We need to step it up. So I'm maybe expecting a little bit more out of them when they play our damage this week, of course. Speaking of our damage, it's just, this is the thing, is that nobody has been consistent yet. We've seen EU's finest look pretty shit week 1. Week number 2, they looked amazing. Obey Alliance looked shit week 1. Week number 2, they looked pretty good. Our damage looked really good week number 1. They looked complete shit week number 2. And then, of course, have I went through everybody? Rated R looked really good week number 1 and looked pretty shit week number 2. So I think nobody's consistent yet, and it's hard to really draw any conclusions other than I think EU's finest are like, they're there now. They got the bad week out the way. I think they'll probably keep their form. But other than that, I'm sort of going into week 3 with like, well, I have no idea what's going to happen. I have actually no clue.
And this is what you like to see, isn't it? I mean, it's exciting. Everyone went into this thinking EU's finest is going to be up the top, and it's whatever game they have, that's going to be a 2-0 straightforward. And then you look at the other game then for the action and the close, rivalries. In terms of the EU's finest R damage game, it was 2-0, 7-1 EU's finest, and then 7-4 EU's finest. That is just classic EU's finest versus R damage. I think R damage now, the amount of times they've lost this roster through different Gears of Wars, they kind of go into it perhaps with their heads down and perhaps not as motivated. And I think EU's finest know how to outplay R damage as a set of core individuals in the basic mechanics of Gears of War. It really does feel like EU's finest can turn up in any shape or form and still deliver a steamroll over R damage. I think that is going to be R damage's kryptonite in this pro league. And to be honest, I don't think R damage should have their heads held down if anyone going forward. Don't let this affect them. They've been through it before, and they need to remember that. This isn't new territory. This isn't a shock, as perhaps Rated R have experience with against Obey after doing so well in week 1. I think R damage should keep their heads held high, looking forward to next week. And something I actually wanted to touch upon really quickly as well before I forget, Obey versus Rated R. The irony that Obey are the slayers and going really fast is comical. The amount of times I've had conversations with Breaker in person, over Twitter, even come up to the start of the Pro League where he mentions the foreign teams, they're so fast, they're so aggressive, they catch us off guard, and it's annoying because they can be unpredictable at times. Then sometimes you question, why have you done that? Why have I just lost that shock battle? And so it looks like Obey has just given them a taste of their own medicine and said, we are pretty good with the shotgun. Let's fight back. Let's get aggressive and see what we can do. And clearly this week, on an individual and team basis, it's paid off.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I was going to say something, but then right at the end, you said on a team basis, sure. and that's where I agree with you wholeheartedly. They outplayed as a team, which is why I think they've got so many, because it's eliminations now, right? You've got those assists tied into it. I think they are firing for each other a lot better than Rated R was. And 1v1, we saw some big plays from Sergio, for example, pulling out some incredible 1v2s.
Yeah, to nearly save his team in round number 13.
Yeah, exactly. But at the end of the day, we saw Obey shoot for each other. They were lancering for each other. The defense that they had on Bunker, maybe that's a clip that we can get on the Twitter, because that was just prime time defense. Like, it wasn't a flashy play. It wasn't Obey going out of their way to really, slay out. But what they did do is they held their angle properly. They had the crossfire at that, that 90-degree angle, and they just looked phenomenal in that situation, and they were absorbing a lot of that pressure. And I think that's why we're seeing their kills and their eliminations, get so high, is because they are shooting for each other so often. They're tallying up those elimination assists as well as those kills, whereas Rated R not so much in that regard, at least. So some differences in play. I wouldn't say that they're banging heads against these crazy slayers on the other teams, but they have a way to beat them, and obviously they can slay out when they need to.
Yeah. So, I mean, after this week, everybody will have played each other. So we'll be on a playing field where we sort of know what's going on, at least. I think after 2 weeks, you can still sort of be like, well, we haven't seen everybody play each other, so, we can't be 100% certain how things are exactly lying. We'll speak about next week. We'll speak about games on Monday next week. We'll go through them then. But I just think after 3 weeks, we'll have a better idea. But at this moment in time, really, we don't know. Actually, you know what? Let's predict it. So OB Alliance haven't played EU's Finest yet.
Yep.
So it'll be OB EU's Finest against, and then it'll be our damage up against Rated R. What we think after the first 2 weeks? What are we getting any sort of established opinion on the teams, or are we still sort of thinking, well, nobody's really been consistent yet? It's hard to sort of predict which way they're going to go.
I would believe EU's Finest will beat Obey. I don't believe they'll make the mistake that Rated R did. I don't think they'll let Bunker slip through. I think they'll ban that out. I think Obey may then default to Vasgar again, and I think EU's Finest beat them on that map. And then let's see what the other two maps are. Probably Training Grounds in there and Asylum maybe. But I think EU's Finest will take that matchup. Then the other matchup, R Damage. I think they may lose. I do. I think from what I've seen overall, Rated R, they didn't have a terrible week this week, right? They had a worse week than they did last week for sure. But they still looked okay, and they still had the promise of winning. Our Damage this week they look like they look like the 4th seed team in this pro league, right? They looked outclassed, and
yeah, go on.
No, I was gonna say I can't. Maybe a miracle comes through. Maybe Rita steps up. Maybe Cougar slays out. Maybe Physics and Zorkos and they all just go off, right? Maybe.
Do you think it was maybe their subpar performance was maybe something more to do with them playing EU's finest? I think it. Yeah, maybe they did sort of make them look bad. Well, I don't want to say bad. They weren't like losing. They were losing 1v1s, and they're not bad players, obviously. But it was just the way that EU's finest sort of just strangulated them like every round. There was a few dominations, but there wasn't a lot. The majority of the time, it did go down to like just winning on points pretty convincingly from EU's finest point of view. So I think, do you think it was more to do with that potentially sort of saying like, okay, this is just the way that EU's finest are going to beat us. This is why it's made us look bad. Because they looked so good in week 1 against Obey Alliance.
They did look good. They did look good, but it was against Obey. Yeah. Right? And Obey, they didn't play a good week. Like they look so much better this week than they did last week. Whereas Rated R, for me, that difference is not as great. And I think their middle ground is better than our damages at the moment, right? Okay. Their average.
Okay, Toby?
That's what I'm feeling. I don't know if it'll come true, right?
Well, who knows at this point?
We'll see.
Toby, what were we thinking?
Yeah, I'd agree with Frew in both games. I think EU's should have a comfortable match against Obey. I wouldn't be surprised if we see another 2-0. Maybe not a similar round count as this week, but I just don't see EU's finest losing that, to be honest. For Rated R and R Damage, I think this game's a bit more interesting. I'd love to see R Damage win, but I just don't see it. Because Rated R has had R Damage's number in the qualifiers coming up to the Pro League as well. And I think I'd agree with Alex, actually. Yes, EU's finest will typically make any team look, like a 4th seed team when they go that hard. But I think Rated R, they just have this edge to them at the moment, this slaying power that if you look at week number 1, they're scary. And I think everyone, at least most people, I'd assume, would say Rated R probably the 2nd seed going into this Pro League. They're the favorites just behind EU's finest due to their performances over the different weeks. And then you have R Damage and Obey battling for that 3rd and 4th. Mm-hmm. I expect Rated R to come back fiery after their loss against Obey. That could be picks and bans. I think Bunker was a very odd choice for them, not safe at all by any stretch of the imagination. I think they'll be kicking themselves for that, as Alex said. I think they'll come back, stick to their guns, stick to what they know actually works as a team and against R Damage, who they've beaten many times before. And to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if I saw a 2-0 in that game as well to Rated R.
Okay. Fair predictions. Let's move on. Let's move on to what we see in LATAM, because I don't think there's too much crazy going on in the US side of things, but Ghost Gaming are yet to win a game. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I've seen these games, but they're going directly after hours, and we're usually busy sorting stuff out at that point. But not winning a game? It's weird. It has to be weird. I don't understand really what's going on. I mean, it's good for the region to see other teams sort of excelling and causing problems for them, but bad for Ghost Gaming. Not looking good.
Yeah, I mean they've been long games, right? I've got the stats up on my screen at the moment. So the first week was against Fire and Ice. In terms of round count, they went 17-17. It was equal in rounds. It was just that Fire and Ice basically edged them out right at the end. Week 2, let me load that up. Internet's been a bit slow. I'm pretty sure that was like 18-15 in terms of round count as well. So it really, they were close games. It was 18-15 to EGYX. So super close rounds. And it's kind of interesting because they were the team, like EU's finest in their region, that were just dominating, right? And now there are so many good challenger teams in that region that they're coming in, and to be 2-0 down, well, 0-2 down after 2 weeks, that's kind of interesting to me. That's very interesting to me. Yeah. They're the only seed 1 team from their region that's not really performing at the moment. EU's Finest, they had a rough week, but we saw them last week. Whereas Ghost and that Latin American Pro League seems to be so close that they're all very, very close games. Apart from Estral, which is the team that they've yet to play. And Estral, they dominated EGYX, they dominated Fire and Ice, and they play against Ghost Gaming this week. And that for me is going to be the interesting matchup.
Yeah. This is the Gears 5 dynamic right now, where you have the top seeds losing games that no one would ever predict would happen, right? It happened with NRG in the qualifiers, with Mazer Gaming and whatnot. EU's Finest now, not only in qualifiers, but also in the Pro League the first week. Now Ghost Gaming as well. And it's, you have to actually question at this point, is it Gears 5? Is it the game? Is it really the teams, or is it the game? Is this, this is kind of a trend now across different regions in the world of Gears esports. And you have to question, is it because teams aren't adapting as quickly as they perhaps like to Gears 5? Is it these top teams expecting to come in and slay perhaps as easily as they were on Gears 4, or have teamwork and cohesion that's built up over time that will allow themselves to take it easy a bit in the practice and continue as they were with the same kind of practice schedule in Gears 4? Lots of questions to be asked, but I do see a trend now across, different teams. I doubt there's a conspiracy of all the top teams saying, "Hey, we're top teams, let's not practice." These are individual, separate teams with their own components who are finding that they're not getting the match wins that they'd like. So, curious to see actually if teams like EU's Finest, NRG, Reciprocity, Ghost Gaming, if their performances change over time now, gradually, or maybe even suddenly. We'll have to wait and see.
I mean, it's at that point where the Pro League's in play now. You need to be performing every single week. You don't want to find yourself in a spot where you could potentially be like relegated. That will come if you aren't playing well. So you don't want to be in that spot come the end of the season. And they're going to have to turn things around really quickly, or they're going to be in danger. Let's move on to Title Update 2, because that came out. It was small, but it's worth talking about. Flash is finally nerfed. You finally can't be flashed through cover. As if that was ever a thing. And the boom shot seems to be buffed a tiny little bit. What are we thinking about this one? Nothing drastic, I would say.
Yeah.
Which doesn't surprise me. I think, as time goes on, we'll see less and less drastic changes. They usually come pretty early. So from the boom shot point of view, it was improve the consistency of the boom shot with changes to the behavior of the secondary bomblets. So I presume they're just going to make them maybe, I don't want to say a little bit more powerful, but as said, more consistent. And as said, with the flashbangs no longer affecting through cover.
It's been something that's been questioned, right, over the past month or two. That we have seen some boom shots that have been a little bit suspect. We've seen a couple on the Pro League already as well, where we've looked at it and gone, "Ooh, that looked like it. Maybe should have killed him." So I think improvements to consistency is a great thing. The change to behavior of the secondary bomblets, I would have liked more explanation in the patch notes as to what the change is, because that's not, for me.
Yeah, I would like a stat, like a
exactly.
This is lowered by a certain amount, or
you need to be given the players the intel, right? So they can make adjustments to how they're playing, and if they don't have the exact details, then it's down to players to work it out. Which, okay, maybe that's that's something that the coalition want players to work it out. But for me, I'd like a number there and a bit of a bigger explanation. Flashbangs through cover, great change. We talked about it here, right?
Don't get me started.
Yeah, we know we've talked about that one enough.
Imagine light going through a solid surface.
Imagine. That's a great point.
Anyway, the other change there, Toby, I don't want to cut you off maybe talking about the boom shot, but ranks have been reset due to the fact that they've changed things around a little bit. A lot of people complaining about the discrepancies between points gained and points lost in certain ranked matches. So they went and fixed that, but by fixing that, they've had to reset everybody, or chose to reset everybody. Yes. I respect it. They've offered a free skin because of it as well, which I think everyone will be like, now that the system has been upgraded, now I can get my definitive rank, so to speak, and I get a new skin. So, I mean, that's nice to see that they have sort of buffered everybody's pain of potentially losing a solid rank. Wouldn't really apply to me as I was in silver, so we'll not talk about that. But I think
that was the issue. Everyone was in silver.
Yeah, well, that was it, wasn't it?
You might be diamond, you might be a master. You don't know.
But no, it's been improved, and it's nice to see them making changes to it.
Yeah, I think this is something we saw coming for a while, right? The ranked experience was dodgy, I guess, across the board for multiple players, pros, competitive players, amateurs alike. I think we've got a few updates coming actually with ranked. There's quite a detailed set of issues TC say, and I think next week is the first major change where we see things changing dramatically. And this goes back to the podcast. Where TC's podcast of where Node Zero got on board and actually said, hey, not too happy with the launch of the game. He admitted that, live, and explained all the issues. And he admitted ranked it's not currently working as intended in any stretch of the imagination, and they're going to go to dramatic lengths to fix that. I think TC also said there was a number of other key things about the game, like tuning and other major complaints from the community where they said, hey, we've made this a priority. We're going to, change all these things and fix them, at their core, not just put like a small band-aid over it, which is good. I really like that, They come out and said, hey, the launch hasn't gone as perhaps whether we wanted, and they're going to improve it as much as possible, along with the communication with the community. So that's really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
One thing actually missing in terms of title update 2, which wasn't a part of the update, it was just before, but we've obviously missed an episode here on Changing Gears, or a week rather, was the aim assist and the Lancer.
Yeah.
Don't have the specific stats in front of me, but in terms of in practice, I've heard from a number of players that there hasn't been that dramatic of a change. Players read, cohesion. Was it cohesion or adhesion? Aim assist part, the third part of the the aim assist mechanics that go into it was reduced dramatically. The Lancer as well was nerfed in different ways, but things aren't too different in terms of my experience on PC with a mouse. Things are, of course, different for me than rather a controller, as aim assist doesn't really come into it as much. But I'm still downing people really, really fast, so I can't really speak from personal experience, but I can only report back what I've seen.
Yep.
And this was important, right? This update, because not many players complained about the Lancer in the competitive community. Usually you'd see it in terms of tuning. The pro players will be the loudest in the community, saying we know how the game should be played. This is what we can't do. This is what we should be able to do, but we can't. But no, the competitive community, we were asking, hey, why are we actually nerfing the Lancer? Has anyone ever touched on the Lancer? No one actually mentioned that in the competitive community from what I've seen over Twitter over the weeks. It was more so the more casual player base that are complaining that they can't move out of cover. In my opinion, a little bit of a nerf wouldn't have been a bad idea. And I think, it is a little bit of a nerf. It's not too dramatic. I don't see any competitive players complaining about that or the aim assist changes, which is great. And props to TC for making such changes.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much, Toby. Let's move on to something else now. Throughout the last week or so, Ryan, Node Zero, had actually been tweeting out a lot of polls, and it's quite a brave thing to do. I respect it, because it's like, all right, what do you want? And he's posted it out there, and everyone's like, well, this is what we want, and let's see if they make the changes. But just go through a few of them. So he was asking about the matchmaking. What's the most important to you? It was pretty tied between a fair match and good ping. 1,000,000% me. I'm like, good ping, please. I don't mind losing on good ping. It bothers me when I have 120. And then he was going on about the Lancer. We already covered that one. And this is where things really get interesting. Just a friendly Friday night poll. Nothing dev related at all. What should I play? Oh, sorry, okay, no, that was not the one I was looking at. It's the next one. Okay, this was it. Just a casual, non-binding poll. But would you folks like a sweaty, quick play playlist? Just TDM and Coth with no squad limit, and then he was going on about loads of other things. There's quite a few polls posted here. I realized I went far too far down. But it's nice to see the fact that, we are seeing the devs reach out to us, reach out to the pro community, reach out to the general community and sort of say, what are you seeing wrong here? What do you actually want?
Mm-hmm. It is interesting. I definitely want to give him a big high five for upping the communication recently. There was a drought. There definitely was from all angles, whether that was community, whether that was design, whether that was support. Like there was a drought, but now they seem to have realized that that was a mistake, and they are stepping it up, and it has been a lot better recently. The polls themselves have been good fun, right? I mean, as he states on all of them, non-binding. So ultimately, whether or not they're going to influence anything is to be seen. But yeah, it's kind of cool. Like I like to have a vote on them every now and again, right? And some of the ones have been kind of interesting. Some of the ones I've felt have not been entirely like they've not been scratching the surface enough. They've been very, very high level. But yeah, props to them. Why not? Let's do it. It's good fun.
I love it.
There was a lot of aim assist questions, Toby.
Yeah, there was a lot of aim assist questions. There was questions on ranked. There was questions even on escalation. The top poll that I've seen is should we keep it the same or should we drop it to first to 5 and boom shot / drop shot on center, so not pickup weapons. I think just honing in on that question really quickly. First to 5, I love it. It brings it more in line with other modes. We have a ranked quitting issue with escalation, especially the matches are so long, players typically leave and you don't finish with 10 players and still in the lobby.
And just to quickly touch on that as well, just when you're playing ranked and you're not necessarily playing with people that you know, especially with the communications on there, it's one of those modes that who's making the call to be like pushing for the domination. Like there will be people who will just sit back because they don't know whether they should be, etc., etc. So I think that's why it probably takes longer, like when you're not in a team. When you're in a team, I mean, what we were seeing games 25-30 minutes throughout the Pro League or so.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think I'm fully on board for first to 5, plainly because I've always said it's too long. It's far too long. We should not be playing maps like the length of League of Legends maps take, like games take. Like that's, for me, it's way off where I think it should be. I think 5 makes much more sense.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think when Escalation got built for Gears 4, it seemed to be aimed at hitting that length, right? Hitting the length of an average esport, let's say. So like your League of Legends, like your Dota games, that 45 minutes, 50 minutes at a push, a little bit of analysis beforehand, like an hour round trip, right? Basically, between an hour and a half round trip. And that is long for Gears. It really is quite long for Gears. And I think that was a mistake, to be honest with you. In hindsight, right? Like it's draining for the players, it's draining for spectators, and I think that's probably what this poll's getting at is how can we make it better for both parties? Because you don't want the gameplay to be affected by this, and that's one of the reasons I'm not 100% loving some of the answers to these polls. Is that okay? We put boom and drop on center. What other changes need to be made to the game mode to facilitate that? And that's never discussed, right? And if it's first to 5, by the time you've placed all your weapons on your own side, you're gonna have basically got to 5 already, right? So there will be no boom and drop on that middle unless a team decides to go for it. So there are other questions around, like especially this one, that I would want answering before that gets made, that decision gets made to change it to first to 5. But it's definitely interesting to think about it. The one thing I'm not, I don't know if you agree, but the one thing I don't like about this is that it's quite a niche audience that he's communicating to. Over Twitter, right? You can see the votes, 1,400 votes.
It's not a big. It's not a huge sample size.
And these kind of things, they need to be done in game. They have to be. You have to give all of your current player bases a voice on this. Even just as a temperature gauge, right? Or you have to target all the players that have played Escalation in the past, month or whatever. That kind of deep diving into the player base. Rather than
if you are going to ask the question, I think one thing to know is that not a lot of developers will even ask, and that's it's a good thing and a bad thing, because if you ask and you get the answer that he has got and then they don't change, then you're like, well, this is what
because it's pretty damning, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's 16. A lot. But then if you don't ask and you make the change and it goes well, then great. If you don't, then well, it's a double-edged sword. It's one of those things where it can hurt both ways. I still think having the communication there is good, but I understand what you mean. It's one of those things where it's not the full player base here, but you would like to think that the serious players follow Ryan. You would hope.
Definitely.
You would hope. But yeah, I think everyone's sort of unanimous in this one from the competitive side of things. First to 5, million% better. Boom, drop shot on center, million% better for me.
Just as a mode escalation, I think they were kind of putting I'm putting out there, TC perhaps putting the cart before the horse when they would build an escalation. I mean, I remember from the very start that it felt like a lot of rounds, the weapon placement for some of these rounds were kind of filler. It felt like everyone was using up their blocks very quickly. You'd have the weakest weapons in the least impactful spots go down because it just seems like these teams either don't want to pitch in too early with their chosen strategy, give too much away, or because they simply don't want the round to change. They want to go again on that same initial because they believe they can win it this time and thus end up winning the round or getting a huge advantage from that, which is fair. I think the issue with the first to 7 is that the weapon placement screen and system isn't as comparable to, say, these longer esports where they have much more resources that really need and require huge match lengths to really accommodate. Let's think about Counter-Strike, which we haven't mentioned so far. You have economy, and you have also a faction switch. The faction switch, first of all, that you need to double the rounds if you want to have the exact same, because that is, it's 2 different games. So you have one team attacking for half of the match and switch over, of course. That's going to be a double of the rounds of what you'd assume from the get-go. Then let's look at economy. I feel like economy, that has a huge influence on each round. It literally, a team goes into a round there. If you're saving currency on that, you literally go into that round assuming you're going to lose. You literally assume you're going to lose, not, we're going to fight for a boom shot in the middle, the other team's stronger. You don't start off with a 50-50 chance. And so that dictates as well that you need more rounds. League of Legends, it's a MOBA, right? It has a lot more to it than just who's shooting who, etc. That's not to knock on first-person shooters or Gears of War third-person shooter. It just entails a lot more data than just simply who are the best with the guns.
It's not like push, shoot,
exactly.
There's so much more to it. There's so much more to these long game modes, which makes them more interesting. That's the thing. If they are going to be this long, it has to be deep. It has to be super deep.
Yes.
And escalation just isn't. There is. And that's not like
it's got to have a story, right? That's how I see League. There's a story for each match,
and that's not a jab at escalation in that respect.
No.
Like I think it's just different. It's a short, like, again, I'll go back to Call of Duty because obviously this is what I've been experienced in for years. These maps do not take that long, and it's short and sharp. A lot of action at the same time. That's the thing. Like League of Legends CS, it can be very, very slow at times, but it's building into something else. Whereas escalation, it doesn't have it can be slow at sometimes, it can be quick pace, but I think that's why they should bring the rounds down, because then, if a dominating win is going to come through, it'll come through fast. If these long strewn out rounds continue, then you're not having a big 45 to 50 minute map. Because it can happen. I mean, when you're talking 3 minutes potentially per round, at the minute, so that's like 13 rounds, so 3 times 13, you're talking about 45 minutes. It's a long time. Yeah. So I think, and that's including weapon picks and everything, which is another like 20 seconds per round. Yeah. It adds in, and I think 5 would pretty much get it in a nicer spot and make it one of these more fast and furious action all the time sort of game mode sort of thing when it is like that. But then when the slow rounds come in, you're not paying for the fact that you're gonna have to sit through 45 more minutes of it.
Yeah, I think as well on that, the bringing it back down to 5, you increase the likelihood of getting to that, what is currently around 13, right? The teams have to win less rounds to get to that stalemate situation. Not stalemate situation, but that final head-to-head battle. So we're going to probably see more intense final rounds. We're probably more likely to see bigger comebacks. Well, not bigger comebacks, we're more likely to see comebacks as well, because rather than having to win 6 rounds, you only have to win 4 rounds to say if you're coming back from 4-1 down. So there's a lot of little things like that for me increase the watchability of the game mode as well as the playability, because it just increases the potential for excitement, which is great for an esport, right?
100%. Just to catch Blue Moon Man up in the chat, that's what we're talking about. We're discussing the fact that he put that poll out. Any of the other polls that you want to touch on? I think that was the main one, wasn't it? Where everyone was like, yeah, okay, let's delve into that.
Good ones, yeah. Like I wasn't even in Swansea. I just remember just going through his Twitter and looking through the responses. What's that? Also funny, Alex. You
can take the boy out of Swansea, but
he's still gonna follow the multiplayer design director and go through his polls. What's that gonna do with anything? I wasn't insulted. All right, good.
What a guy.
I remember going through all these tweets, right, and looking at these responses, getting involved in the conversation. It was really enjoyable, actually, because No Zero, he wasn't actually putting out these polls. He was engaging with questions.
There was a lot of communication after.
I mean, you said it. A lot of these questions were high level, and then you have these experienced pros and coaches going in and saying, "Hey, what about this?" And then No Zero actually engages in that and says, "Oh, that's a great idea." I think even the polls in game, that was discussed in detail in one of these. I remember reading, and Ryan was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna get that in the game at some point. Not sure when, but I really hope to do that." And I think they're really important. In terms of the other polls, there was loads of them. I'm trying to find. Okay, maybe matchmaking is a good one to go into, because this is one where it wasn't just a landslide, and you'd expect perhaps a lot of these polls to be landslides like the escalation one. But in terms of matchmaking, Ryan typed, when matchmaking, the most important thing to me is 3 categories. You have fast matchmaking.
Good ping is the answer.
Fair match.
It's not. Fair match is the answer, because
this
a fair match will match teams up so their ping is both fair.
I thought you meant from just like a sheer rank perspective.
It's not that quantitative, shall we say, because of the discrepancy. Because yes, you need ping for a fair match, but the issue for me, which is why I actually kicked off in this tweet.
Did you?
I was shocked. After 2,000 votes, fast matchmaking had 15%. Honestly, do you know what the biggest complaint is on this game that I see in Twitter? I see screenshots of people trying to find match in popular modes at peak time on Xbox, average ranks, 12 minutes, still haven't found a game. I've seen players, and obviously I'm really hit hard by this being on PC and having such a small population to deal with.
Yep.
And in the UK and Europe, it's not as large as the North American side. I can't find games half the time, guys. I'm sorry. I literally cannot find games in so many modes. It's not because I'm a high rank, because I've not been able to play that much as of recent. It's not quiet modes. It's even, the busiest modes, I struggle to find matches. And then you go up into a stacks where you play with your friends. You want to play with your friends now and then. 4, 5-man parties. Can't find a game even on the most popular modes like TDM and King Nell. What's important is fair match and good ping. You can't even play a game. Please.
I get you. But my counter argument would say, do those things, are they like multiple? Like, do they multiply the effect of that long match? Like, if you wait like 10 minutes and then you get into a shitty match where you're on US West, but you're over in Europe and you're on 190 ping and your teammates leave, like,
I feel like,
does that make it even worse? Yes, it does. Whereas if you look at games, so I'll talk of personal experience on Apex at the moment. I'm grinding through ranked on that. We've just got to Diamond, and the matchmaking time for that is getting long, and that's on a game with a very, very high player base, a very, very large player base, right? We wait like 6-7 minutes now for a ranked game on Apex.
That's 100 people though.
It's 100 people, but you got to think about how many people it is. It's a free game. Like, I still kind of feel like that's a long matchmaking time, but it's not a problem, because when we get into a game, we're on a very, very local server. We're in a game that is reasonably fairly balanced across the board, right? We're Diamond. Yes, we get some Predators in there. Yeah, we get some Platinums in there. But in general, everyone is about our skill level. And it's not really an issue. You make a cup of tea, you come back, you get in your game, we're in a game. It's not great if you want to just, play one game at lunch, right? If you are that casual kind of fan.
I think that's the thing, though. It's, again, an Apex Legends game can take, 30 minutes?
Yeah. 20 minutes.
So you're committing to a full Battle Royale game there. And it's I think
but that's what you should be doing if you're going to escalation, right?
Well, because that's the thing, yeah. But if you're not playing escalation,
it's the same length time.
It's still taking you quite a while to get in for like a quick, short game. You know
when your
what I mean?
matchmaking time is longer than your game time, then
that's it. That's the problem. I think you can sort of say, well, sometimes these games take a long time. If you're playing a battle royale game, I can understand not getting in straight away. But to a point where these games do not take that long, that's when the question has to be asked. Well, why is this taking so long?
I feel like this is a step-by-step process as well, because you need to hit one before you hit the other. If you can't find a game, ping and fair is irrelevant. If you can find a game, then you start caring about ping, fair balancing. and after that point, once you're playing on local servers, you can actually perhaps start worrying about whether everyone in the game is the same rank, which is something we've never experienced, whether we're in Gears of War history. Gears 3, peak times, etc., ranks, balancing. It's never been, high level ranked experiences from, these premier games that we've had over the years. I feel like 15% for me was just so concerning, almost heartbreaking. It's just like, I mean, is this only a North American, average rank, poll or something? I mean, because that's always what I see anyway, is the issue of finding matches. I feel like we should go through a step-by-step process, not be like, oh,
but that's the issue though, Toby.
But we can't find games anyway,
the issue then becomes, which is the cause? Like is the cause of not getting a fairly balanced match because so many people don't want to queue for that long that they just don't queue, so there's not enough players in the pool to make a fair match, right? Is that the cause? Or is it the opposite way around? Is it the matches are that unfair that people don't want to queue for games that are unfair, so then there's not enough players in the pool, and that increases the queue time, right? Like, it's very difficult to determine which one to aim for, and I guess that's right. That's why you're saying that it's kind of concerning that it's 15%, is because they kind of all should be even, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
like they're all, are they a cause, are they an effect, or is it both? Because they could spiral, right?
They could. I think we'll move on from the subject, because I think we're flogging a dead horse to a point. I think we might just go around in circles. Let's go to the chat. Kenny, thanks for joining us, mate. Is asking, do you actually have faith for TC to fix everything? I think if the communication is there, and they've sort of established a line of, we're trying. I think as well, and this is just from like a standpoint of over a multitude of different games. I've been involved with the COD scene, FIFA scene, Gear scene now as well. It's the same thing. These things can't happen so fast, because console thing. I think everyone looks at Fortnite now and sort of thinks, you look at them, how quick they fix things. But it's because they run things through their own client. The thing is with like putting them through Xbox PC, you've got to run it through. It doesn't just happen instantly, which has been a big bugbear for the community, I think. So these things do take time. I don't know what your input is on this. I have faith in them to a point. I think there's only so many things that can probably get done.
Yeah.
As well as there's only so many things that probably want to do. They probably don't want to change some things that have been complained about. Whereas, I think there will be things in there that they sort of agree on, and they will be working on it, and it does take time.
This is what I really liked about the polls, especially, is it really gives you an insight into design philosophy. So many important topics that have not really previously been addressed or in question. Yet you have no zero questioning how long escalation should be, something that's been unchanged since the launch, of escalation way back on the launch of Gears 4. A multitude of other things like aim assist, like which modes should have aim assist, which shouldn't. And a big one for me as well, which we haven't touched upon, is a conversation, I believe, within one of these polls Ryan was having with one of the coaches, and they were talking about having a really restricted playlist mode offering where only there would be 4 modes. It would be TDM or arcade, it would be Koth, it would be escalation, and then it would be a 2v2 mode, something like that, just to bring up player numbers in each playlist and address a lot of these matchmaking issues and whatnot. I think what this gives us is an insight into design philosophy, and that's going to be the key thing that either promotes or prevents changes. TC have gone into this game with key ideas as to how the game, 1, should play, 2, what modes, how the pace of the game, these general overarching views which dictate all these decisions. And like you said, Chris, it's up to TC as to whether they look at this feedback on certain things and they say, we like this idea, we're going to run with it, or perhaps they don't like the idea despite a big loud audience of within the community saying they don't like it, or they don't like a change, or whatever. And I think it just comes down to the future. Hey, how much time do TC have to legitimately address a lot of these issues, and whether they want to engage in such perceived issues or not. Some aspects they might actually like about the game.
Yeah, I think something to note. Sorry, something else to note is obviously the Pro League's going on. They don't so much mind, I think, making changes during it, but within a big event coming up very, very shortly, it's one of those things where it's like, how many changes do we want to make to the meta here? It's happened before, and again, sorry, I'm touching on Call of Duty again, where a big change maybe even comes like the day before an event, and everyone's like, what the fuck? Like, we don't want that. You do not want that, because it changes the meta. Everyone's having to relearn the game to a point at the event, or just a week before the event, and it can mess things up a little bit. So I think that you take that into consideration as well. I think we'll move on from that question, though. I think, ultimately we do have faith, and I think we're going to keep showing that faith, and just sort of say, let's see what you can do. Let's see what you can do. Because I think, especially when the game came out, I and this is from my standpoint as somebody who's never been like a really serious Gears player, I really enjoyed the game when it first came out, and I just, I would love to see it keep developing, and I think, it has its issues. Everybody knows it has its issues, but, I think it has potential. It absolutely has potential. TJ asking, who's the top 3 kills in the EU Pro League and how many? Have I still got the sheet open? I don't.
I've got them if you want them.
Go ahead.
I'm going to go top 5 just because I know this is a bit of an ego stroking question, because I know he knows he's in the top 3. So let's go top 5 instead. So Saki's at the top. He's got 169 eliminations. That's 42.25 average per map. And then after that, you've got Breaker at 142, TJ at 138, Dragons at 137, and also Sergio at 137.
So it'll be Hydra running 5th technically as well with 136.
Yeah, just one under. But yeah, they're in the chat. The averages are in the brackets. The elimination totals are not. So you can have a look at them there. And if you've got any more questions, we can definitely find those stats for you. That's for sure.
We're not releasing everything though. We need something to get our social media channels going. You can't have the document. You gotta have the document. Okay, so
I'll give over, Warrior.
Yeah. Okay, so Blue Moon Man is asking, Gears is so competitive. It can be rough for casuals and hardcore players with the current issues. Do you think another game mode that is more tuned where rank doesn't matter is the solution? For example, Golden Gun.
I think we've got other game modes, right? I think it's difficult
we have
because
too many modes. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I think
too many modes.
We need to consolidate. And honestly, if you go back in time, you ask me what would I not put in Gears? Out of all of the Gears, it would be TDM.
Yeah,
I would. I think that single-handedly has caused so many issues with the Gears in future titles that's the one thing that I would just go back in time and go, yoink, no, we're not having that. And I know a lot of people love it, right? A lot of people love TDM, but
simple.
But the problem is the game modes that came before it were also simple, but they forced players to learn the game properly. They forced players to understand Gears is a very harsh game, and you don't get that now. I don't feel like there's the same kind of
games in general.
Way less pressure.
Games in general have went in this direction. It's I feel like I'm just constantly like, oh, look how many games I've casted. But it's like it's the same in Call of Duty. It used to be a lot harder, but developers are now having to cater to how accessible consoles and PCs are now for people, to the point where everybody and their granny has one. And I think it's the fact that a lot of people are buying their games and saying, oh, well, this is really hard. How do we make it easier for people? And this is generally across the board how it is now. It's just how it is. It makes sense.
But there's a lot of focus on it in Gears. Yeah, that's what I feel, right?
Focus,
like you have. Let's look at the rank modes, right? You got TDM, you got King of the Hill, you got Guardian, you got Escalation. They all respawn game modes, all very, very. I don't want to say casual because they're not casual. That's not correct. But
Escalation definitely isn't.
Yeah, they're very much catered to being forgiving to players. because they know players won't stick around if they just put them in a single life game mode, right? But I kind of feel like those forgiving game modes minus escalation should be just packaged into a single playlist, and that you should just vote on what you're playing. That's kind of how I feel it should be, and then you should have your single life and then your escalation.
That gives you the full.
For me, yeah. I don't think you need more than that. I think Golden Gun is cool. Arms Race was. In Gears 4, one of my favorite modes, to be honest with you. So yeah, maybe that's in there in that respawn package, but I don't know. I kind of feel like adding more isn't the solution. We need to teach players to be better rather than give them ways out of not being better.
Yeah, look at Gears 1, right? We had the respawn mode in Annex come in, not even at the release of the game. The release of Gears 1 was just non-respawn modes. Hey, good luck, have fun.
This is it.
You better learn to kill or survive or both, and better do it fast. So that was really harsh and unforgiving. I'm not suggesting just no respawn modes, of course, that would make sense. But we have King of the Hill now. We don't really need TDM if you have King of the Hill.
That's
King of
true.
the Hill is not some elite esports mode like escalation. It can be played very casually, and it can also be played competitively if the maps and respawns or the spawns allow you to do so, like in Gears 3. And I think King of the Hill is the best mode we've had for bridging casual and competitive. It's been the one right in the center, very neutral. It can be high level, high skill, perfect for stack versus stack. Or it can be very casual where everyone runs with a shotgun, but there's still an objective to stop people from camping. And that is what you need. It's perfect. It's the one mode that bridges everyone together and has the perfect stepping stone to force players from, oh, I'm in a mode right now that I've usually seen as a casual environment, but now I'm up against some good players and I have to play properly. This is where the teamwork comes in. And then there's a gradual progression. I feel like Team Deathmatch, Arcade, this should be grouped into one. The start of very first mode. I'm telling you now, Team Deathmatch doesn't work for stacks. I've gone through Gears 3. Let's not, that should not be ranked, in my opinion. But we won't. I'll try not to go on a tangent here, boys.
I'd agree.
Yeah, Arcade, TDM, throw it in the same bunch. King of the Hill, that's the neutral respawn mode. That's the bang in the center. That's the mode if you want a quick game or whatever. And then after that, you have your high level escalation execution. And these three categories of play, there should be a single mode offering, or perhaps when you go into votes, you vote for the mode and then you vote for the map. I think we might have had that in the past, actually. I think we had player's choice, I think in Gears 2 and 3, where you go into this playlist and the teams would vote on the mode before the map comes up, which was quite interesting. It only takes 10 to 20 seconds if you want to put a timer on it. This is what this is the mode. And on that very topic, Nerdzero was saying in his polls that they have a new mode potentially coming up, or at least an idea, which they believe could bridge the gap between casual and competitive, say between Koth and escalation, maybe bang in the center, maybe a mode that's good enough for high level play. So could replace escalation, who knows? At this point, it looks like TC are perhaps questioning a lot of things now. Who knows where Gears 5 takes us, as there are clearly a lot of changes that are in the works and a lot of demands being sent up from the community. Playlist consolidation is crucial, and we've seen this, even the biggest games have less modes than Gears of War. I feel like a lot of these modes were released as to try and spice up the game, have some unique selling points. This is how this Gears is different to the last one, or catering to casuals. Let's step away from that for a moment. Let's focus on the positives that can be gained from sticking to categories in terms of modes and consolidation above all else.
Cool. I just want to touch on something. If the boys are still here, TJ, and that Saki may well have the most eliminations. He also actually has the most deaths. Yeah. He's got the most deaths by not by far. What by
a
4?
bit.
By 4.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah, over TJ. He's got 4 more than TJ, but he does have the most deaths. Absolutely. Just something to point out there. Jesus.
And also, top 5 in deaths.
The top 3 the top 3 slayers are the top 3 deaths as well.
And the next 2 in deaths are actually the other 2 obey members. So be careful on your deaths.
They like to get sticky, relevant of which end of the shotgun they're on. Kenny Bounce, we'll call this the last question. What is your prediction of what the new mode is? Haven't got a fucking clue.
Execution with objective, please.
You think?
Thank you.
That's what we'd want.
We've requested it for years. This, I hate to say it because I really do like escalation, but I feel like all the way back in Gears of War 2, players were speaking to Epic or best they can, communication back in those days.
Yeah.
From the very start. Execution is amazing. We've played this for over 10 years. It's so good. There is one teeny little issue, stalemate. Can we do something about it?
Yes, we can.
COD exists with Search and Destroy. Counter-Strike exists with the bomb. Can we please put a Gears spin on it? I'm sure we can make it happen. That's what I'm hoping for, as I feel like execution is still, heavily favored by the Gears community. Even look at Nick Merckx, who used to compete on this game. He doesn't any longer, but when he does come on this game as a huge influencer, he wants to play execution. He doesn't want to play escalation. This is a fan favorite mode for fans that we no longer see playing the game. And I feel like it's a proven mode for clutch plays and entertaining gameplay at every level. And honestly, I think execution is better for casual play than escalation, mainly due to the match length, but also due to complexity. Execution or an XE mode with an objective is a lot more simplistic. It appeals to casuals even better than escalation does. So, that's what I'm hoping for. Sure, it's the same with Kenny and a number of pros.
Yeah. We'll quickly answer Kenny's last one. Just to point out to TJ, yes, it is Saki with the most deaths as well as the most kills. Go with Kenny's last question. What's the difference between NA and EU comp play?
It's a good question. I can throw my answer out there.
Go on, because if Toby answers, we'll be here till 10:30.
That's true. For me, it's practice. Honestly, I think that's a bit of fluff. I think NA teams have much better, higher quality practice and consistently, and that affects the European teams not having that quality practice 100%. When they get against the North American teams. They're not as consistent as far as I can see. This is why you're seeing the European Pro League a little bit more flat, I guess, than the others in terms of results. Because our teams they're not as consistent. I don't think it's a skill difference. I honestly don't. I think the quality time helps improve how teams play the maps and how they read scenarios. So there is a difference in how teams play and approach games and maps and different matchups, but that for me stems from that practice or lack of.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's the same difference as to why top PC teams can't beat top console teams. It's simply the lack of practice. It's literally a skill cap because PC players only really typically play amongst themselves in the PC community. I can say that from experience. It's the same reason with EU's Finest and Gears 4, why they struggled consistently against the top teams, and as of Optic, now NRG, etc. It's literally just practice. Lack thereof in terms of they're not as strict with the schedules, but also an invisible skill cap if they're only playing against teams in their own region. They're not being exposed, just like exercise. You don't have that stimulus to actually force change and gain. So EU are more spinning their wheels. Meanwhile, NA have their own, population where they can scrim against each other, really high level, and force quick, rapid improvement. And I think as time goes on, we'll only see perhaps EU's finalists get better because they're, they're able, or they're in a position to change their sleeping schedules and play against the North Americans. And North Americans, of course, they'll continue to play against each other and see them all upgrade, and really, improve as a team. I agree with Alex as well. It's not individual either. Individual skill really. I think maybe not in the peak instances, because a lot of players would say mental is perhaps the best player, or explosive, and a lot of these really top.
But they're
players,
outliers, right?
Outliers, etc. Excluding use fires, you'd say perhaps better individually, but that I think individually it's not as important as teamwork in terms of the skill cap, practice wise. And so just to wrap it up, it is literally refinement, invisible skill cap ceiling, however you describe it, and perhaps lack of practice not being as serious.
Yeah, I'd agree. And I think as we see more events and people play each other more at these events, we'll see the gap reduced. I would say. It's typically always what tends to happen in any sport, in any game. The more that people play each other, the closer it gets. It's that simple. Well, go on. Maybe just one more from Kenny, since he's the only one asking the questions. So, if Gears of Execution compared to Escalation, do you think this will be? You would see more European teams or Latin teams cracking the top 4, right?
Yes. Well,
maybe.
I mean, this is what I was going to say. EU's finest, they would be clapping if that happened. Let's just think. EU's finest, when they were playing against their top teams across the world in Gears 4, it was often their slaying power and their aggression, their actual individual skill, if you will, that oftentimes put them over the edge of a lot of players and teams. I mean, EU's finest, if you take out, the reduced amount of practice and rotations out of it, if you just literally boil it down to initials, EU's finest, like, yeah, 100%. Give me that mode, bro. Running all the way to the bank as they start winning more tournaments and get better positions. In terms of, I mean, LATAM as well, right? We've seen some incredible performances from the top players in Gears 4 where they just dominate in the slaying department on Gears 4 Escalation. It's just a lot of times they're just outclassed in the strategy and teamwork department. So, yeah, I think so, Kenny. I mean, as the stakes are so high, with the amount of money in Gears Esports, I'm sure everyone will improve across the board compared to what we've seen in the past when Execution was the esports mode, and there will be more depth and refinement to strategy and teamwork, etc. But I think that would be advantage EU LATAM, if anyone.
I think also you got to look at this. So this question, it's based on how teams performed in Gears 4, right? And how many European teams managed to get into that top 4 to 8 as he mentions. So we'll count EU's finest in as, a given pretty much every time. Outside of that, we had an issue in the previous Gears where seeding points basically meant the same teams went over there in that second place position every single time. And that second place team from Europe was almost, it was either Ash's group with Incisive, or it was the French group. Neither of them actually really played. They just went, played a tournament, came back, and because of the seeding points that they gained from playing those majors, they stayed in those positions, and it was impossible for our better, lower seeded teams to supersede them and get that placement. And because of that, I don't think the second, we're looking at like the Lucent teams. That's what I'm kind of thinking of now, or Cyclone. They didn't get the same practice as the second seed teams in all the other regions. Not at that high level. They, when you're in those pro leagues, you always get those games. You always have to play, your 3-4 games, at least 3 games a group, right? And our teams didn't get that, and I feel that was a big hindrance as well to the amount of teams that made it past that top 16. It made it kind of difficult. Also, in just numbers, pure numbers, right? If we could send every European team over there, then yeah, I think of course we would. But the fact that there's a huge ocean between EU and NA, literal ocean, that is costly to get our better teams over there. And if they're not funded out by orgs, which we're having problems with at the moment, is getting orgs for these top teams, and they're not in that top placement slot, then yeah, it's very difficult for European teams to match that standard. So you think EU will have a stronger showing in SD? I'm not sure. I think our teams going out now are better than Gears 4 for sure. Whether or not the pro league
seems a more level playing field, doesn't it?
But it's early days, right? And there is a hell of a lot more good teams over in NA that I see at the moment. That I maybe they'll cause some issues. I think the fact that it's a single elim bracket up at the top end is definitely something that could cause some upsets. But
there's more chance of it, isn't there? Yeah.
Well, it just means that there's more chance of the top teams, not being in that losers bracket to knock them out. But I don't know. I'm not sure if there's more chance or not right now. Be difficult to answer. I'm looking forward to ST though.
We'll see. About a month, isn't it? About a month's time. We're excited for it.
I think
we're excited for it. Well, we'll close it off there. Thank you for all the questions, specifically from Kenny. Thank you very much for joining us in here, and thank you, boys, for joining me once again. Hopefully, we'll be back next week. I know we had a lull. We had a bit of a lull, but I want to keep it rolling. We need to keep it rolling. We need to find if Elliot's alive at some point as well. Try and get him back on and just saying stupid shit. We're far too sensible, us three. We need a bit of Elliot coming in. But yeah, once again, thank you very much for coming on, boys. Long episode. I think that was maybe our longest one. Usually when I ask any questions, there's maybe two. But everybody jumped in. So thank you everybody that did come and join us for episode number 7. If you came in late, we do often, or every single week I should say, put this up on our YouTube. So make sure you follow the Moobot's been putting our Twitter on there. So you drop a follow to that. We'll be posting links there. Also to Spotify and Apple Music if you want to listen via podcast. Of course, if you want to just hear our voices and not see our ugly faces. Next thing live is probably on Monday. We'll be live at 6 p.m. once again on live.gearsofwar.com. So make sure you don't miss that. Plenty of good games to come there. And we will see you guys then. And we'll see you guys on Thursday next week as well. Catch you boys there.